Welcome everyone to the Weights and Biases Salon. I have here today two guests who are the co-hosts of UCLA ACM AI Student Group's podcast, You Belong in AI. And so we're going to hear from Ava and from Matt a little bit about themselves and about their work, their careers, such as they are so far as undergraduates. And then we'll talk a bit more about the podcast, which its sort of core topic is about it's an interview podcast, not unlike what we're doing right now, with inspiring figures in AI, not unlike what we're doing right now, and with a particular focus on representation and inclusion. So there's some really great discussions. I really have enjoyed listening to the podcast, and I'm really excited to hear from Matt and Ava here today.
Yeah, I'm super excited.
Yeah,
Let's
thanks
get
for having
into it.
us.
I don't know if we can call ourselves like, influential figures in AI, but hopefully one day.
It said inspiring, and that's maybe an easier goal than influential. Influential is a tough one. So yeah, I guess just to start off, maybe tell some of our viewers here who might not have seen the podcast or know about y'all UCLA ACMAI. Like maybe I guess starting with Matt, how'd you become interested in programming and in AI? How'd you sort of get into this field?
Yeah, so I think it started in the high school. I don't remember exact moment in time. There's no like epiphany moment that happened, but I remember like early high school. I tried programming once just on my own. It wasn't for me. So I decided just to take a class like my senior year. And when I took the class, like I kind of fell in love with it. I was always a math person, just very analytical things, and that just kind of seemed to fit my style, like when it came to programming. And when it came to like computer science, there's like different fields I was interested in. I was like interested in like cybersecurity, but then I was also interested in AI. And I don't know what about it was it for me with artificial intelligence, but just seeing or just knowing that I could program something that had like inherent intelligence. I don't know, it just attracted to me. I don't know. There's just something about it that attracted to me. I can't even describe it right now, but I think that's like senior year of high school. That's when it hit for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting that you mentioned that like sort of AI was really what convinced you to try it out. Ava, did you have a similar experience?
A little bit. So I took my first I had my first CS experience when I was a freshman in high school, and my parents are both engineers. My mom's an my mom's a software engineer, and so is my uncle. So I kind of took after them, and I did really like it, but I didn't think I wanted to major in it in college. I wanted to go down more of a route of electrical engineering, like my dad. So that's kind of where I got into electrical engineering, was just doing some other things in high school with it. But I knew I still liked computer science all along, and I wanted to get involved in a computer science field. Also, I've been pretty much told all my life artificial intelligence is the future and you should really get involved in it because like it's gonna be everything. And it kind of is everything already. But yeah, I knew I wanted to get involved in AI. I knew I wanted to get involved in um, CS, even though I am an electrical engineering major. And then yeah, so that's kind of how I got interested in it. So
Nice. Yeah, it's interesting. I guess I actually didn't start programming at all until I was, or well, I did a little bit of MATLAB and R for data analysis when I was in college, but I didn't fully really fully start programming until I was already in graduate school. And I had been told that artificial intelligence was this big waste of time that people had like kind of tried and failed at. I remember making fun of one of my friends in college because he was working on AI stuff, and I was like, "Don't you know that's never going to work?" And yeah, so it seems like we've had quite different paths. A question actually came in from YouTube from Florian Hofstetter, which actually is a question I wanted to ask soon, which is sort of what parts of AI are you most interested in? I really like computer vision personally. It's my favorite. It's like maybe best understood, which I like as a math person. But what about y'all?
Yeah, I could take this on first. So actually, this past year in quarantine, I was trying to like figure out this question on my own. Because I knew I was interested in AI, but there's so many subfields, and I didn't know like which one I was interested in. So I kind of like took these past like 9 months, just like kind of dabbling in everything, and nothing really hit for me until I took a graphics class, like last quarter, and I really loved the professor, and he does research in particularly like artificial life and computer graphics. And I'm actually a really visual person. I learn a lot by visualizing. And for me, just like the part of graphics, just applying AI to graphics was something I could like visually see. I could visually see the results. Whereas for like some other machine learning subfields, it's harder to like visually see it. And just being able to like create like an artificial life character, like in a like Unity or Unreal Engine, and just being able to see the results, just really like inspired me to like continue pushing on into the subfield.
Nice. Yeah, there was actually some really cool work came out like maybe last week or earlier this week, very recently, on like people have been doing GANs for rendering and sort of like pushing the envelope with that. But yeah, Vlad Koltun at Intel had some really great work that just came out that just like really like sold me on it. I hadn't been sold on GANs for rendering or even really on neural rendering. I was a little skeptical, but it was really, really impressive results. So it's an exciting field for sure.
So
Ava, what about you?
yeah, so I think first thing that really got me interested in AI and kind of a reason why I joined ACM AI was I took this class in my first quarter of freshman year at UCLA, and it's called E96C, Internet of Things and Embedded Machine Learning. And so we did a bunch of projects with like, I didn't 100% understand what I was doing. It was like an intro course to a very advanced topic, which was embedded machine learning and Internet of Things. But I really liked it. It was pretty cool. So pretty much what we did the entire time was we used this like sensor tile code with like an ARM in it and like using embedded machine learning and Internet of Things technology to pretty much detect movements. And so you would train the machine and then you would like do different movements and it would be able to detect it based off of the training that you gave it. So which is pretty much what they do in like VR and stuff. And like different video games and stuff. And so that's honestly something that I've like really been interested in. I haven't dived too deep in it since I did take that class. But yeah, that's something that I actually do really like. And I personally don't play video games all that much, but the ones that I have, I do like. And I think that it's really cool to make like really cool sensorial experiences for different people. And I'd love to like get involved in that in any way possible when I get older.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely a cool domain and one with a lot of room to grow and improve. So you've already touched on this a little bit, but I guess there's a lot of kind of divisions in like what kind of careers you might pursue in AI, and you're definitely, at the stage where you are early enough to make these decisions, but you kind of need to start making those moves. So, like, are you thinking research or engineering? Are you thinking being an individual contributor who writes code, makes stuff, versus being a manager who makes sure a team is able to deliver something, versus being a founder who creates a company, not just the technology, but also the like social structures and the money and all these other things? Where are you feeling on those fronts?
I like that's a good question. I would say, everyone wants to be a founder in I mean not everyone, but I feel like, the founder job sounds pretty cool, It's like you get a lot of money and you get to make something from the start. But then I like read stories about how stressed Elon Musk was when like Tesla and SpaceX were first starting out and how he like didn't sleep for days and like became really depressed for a couple of years, and then that kind of stuff makes me rethink that. But in a perfect world, I would love to be a founder. But before that, I definitely think that I want to go to grad school. So that's kind of where my focus is right now. My focus is on just getting to grad school, and then after that, figuring out what I want to do from there.
Cool. Yeah, I've worked with the grad school PhD founders, and with college dropout founders, and people can make it work no matter what path they take, if they're willing to deal with the no sleep and the high responsibility.
Yeah.
I guess for
What about you,
myself,
Matt?
yeah. So for myself, I guess like the past like few months or so, this is like the question like I ask myself like every day, not like, every day, but like pretty often, like what path I want to take. Because there's definitely a lot I could take, from where I'm at as a second year. There's obviously the path like machine learning engineer that's attractive, work on like real world problems. Then there's like also another path, like I mentioned about being a founder. And both of them like really attract to me. Um, I guess like I said, I hope one day I become a founder, but I'm really not letting myself push it too hard, because if I just push it too hard, I don't want to force anything. Um, I found that like the passionate projects that I've been involved with, they've come naturally, and I'm just really just waiting to see like what opportunity comes upon me, or like what ideas I come up with. But yeah, not forcing anything and just seeing what happens.
Nice. Yeah, I do think maybe 10 or 15 years ago, you might have gotten the advice that like you should found now, like found when you're 22, drop out of college and found a company. But I think the advice you'll get nowadays, at least the advice you're going to get from me right now, is that you can found a company when you're 40 something years old, if you want to. And a lot of very successful founders are people who've built up a big stable of skills over time. But like I said, lots of people take different paths to get to that final result. So pivoting a little bit over towards what you're currently working on rather than the exciting future ahead, maybe tell us a little bit more about the work. You're both in this outreach group in the AI group in the ACM club. So maybe break that down for our viewers who are not familiar with the structure of this student group.
Yeah, I could take this one really quickly. So yeah, ACM AI, or it's like ACM at UCLA. We're probably like the biggest computer science club at our school. And within ACM, there are different subcommittees, AI being one of them. There are other subcommittees like Hack, which focuses on like web design or web applications, other ones like cybersecurity. And even like one of the cooler committees is called Design, which creates all the cool designs for all of our committees, like the one I'm using for my background. So yeah, they make great designs. So shout out to them. Yeah, we love them so much. But yeah, ACM, it's one of the bigger clubs on campus for CS, and our goal is to make like CS learning or learning CS as easy and as inclusive as possible. We have a lot of workshops across all our subcommittees, and we try to reach out to like non-CS majors too, because we know programming could be like really useful for a lot of different industries, and we just want to share the love with programming, and yeah, that's the best way I could put it.
Mm-hmm. ACM, is that like that's like a broader organization that's across multiple campuses? So this is like a chapter of a broader group?
Yeah. There's like a couple different ones. I think UC Riverside just started one, and so did UCSD. And so one thing that we've been working on lately, so like kind of like there are the subcommittees that Matt talked about, and then like overarching is like board, which is like, then it's not as scary as it sounds. They're actually all pretty nice. But they are like in charge of like some of like the more broader organizational things. So something that they've been interested in doing is like collaborating with other UC chapters of ACM. So yeah, that's pretty fun. I'm looking forward to those.
I see. And I guess in the Zoom era, it's a little bit easier maybe to collaborate across campuses, if maybe not quite as fun as the sleepover.
Definitely.
So the particular thing that the two of you work on with outreach that we're here to nominally discuss today is the You Belong in AI podcast. So maybe if you could tell us just a little bit about that podcast.
Yeah, so the main goal of the podcast is to bring, it's an interview style, but the goal is it's mainly centered at, high school students, college students, anyone who's really interested in AI. You could be like older as well and interested in artificial intelligence, but the whole point is just to spread the message that anyone can be in artificial intelligence. I feel like sometimes saying the words artificial intelligence can be a buzzword, and it also can be something that seems super, super complicated. And, there definitely are still barriers to that. And we never deny that in our podcast. But our goal is definitely to inspire everyone who wants to be in it to just try and go for it. That's like the main goal of our podcast. And so, every speaker has a different story, and they all have different like facets of advice, and they all have like definitely cool experiences to talk about. And they all just kind of relay that onto the audience. And hopefully, we inspire people to get into AI, give people advice on how to get into AI. And yeah, that's pretty much the goal of the podcast.
Mm-hmm. And I guess, so what are some of the reasons why you chose or are working with this particular podcast format as a form of outreach, right? There's lots of different ways that one can reach out. Do you think there's like particular benefits for the podcast format for the sort of style you're going for, or the like the mission that you in particular have?
Yeah, so one thing that we like about the podcast is that, we could easily distribute it to like whoever we want to distribute it to. And yeah, like sure, it's an interview format. Like one of the things like for this season in particular that we're trying to focus on is we really want to get to know who we're interviewing, like how, like the journey, just the questions like you asked us earlier. We really want to understand like the journey that they took, because we believe that the best way for our audience to resonate with these inspiring figures is to realize that, maybe they had the same journey, or they were in the same position that I was, in high school. And, if they can see that, if they could relate to that, then, maybe there's a greater chance that they could see themselves in AI. So just that's our main theme. And yeah, like I said earlier, just the podcast, it's easy to distribute, and just reach out to as many people as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the conversational format does seem to work nicely to get people to tell their life stories. Like the episode with Paco Guzman of Facebook AI, who is working on under-resourced languages and like, making NLP, more inclusive. His sort of like was like, well, you asked him, I think, about his high school experience or his college experience, and he was like, well, let me go back to I was a child growing up in like this place in Mexico and blah, 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 blah. So what are some like sort of moments in these? One of the nice things about the sort of conversational format is that you can kind of have these like moments of sort of surprise or like serendipity. So were there any moments that were particularly surprising to you or particularly serendipitous when you were running the podcast and interviewing folks?
Actually, this is something that I haven't told Matt about, but so the second person that we interviewed, her name was Shanasa. Her name is Shanasa. And she goes to Cornell. She's a graduate student at Cornell. She's a PhD candidate. And I was always like, when we were doing the interview, I was like, God, she looks familiar. And then one day, like probably 2 weeks after we filmed the podcast episode, I remembered where I knew her from. In high school, I did an engineering program at Cornell over the summer, and she was one of my counselors. And I remember having a full-on conversation with her about her like being a PhD candidate. I was like, "Oh my God, you're a PhD candidate? That's so cool." And then like I thought that she would be like much older because she was a PhD candidate, but then I found out on the podcast she just went straight from undergrad to PhD, so she was actually pretty fairly young. And she also went to Pomona College, which is like an hour away from me. So I don't know. I found that out like a week later, like a week after like the podcast was uploaded and everything. And I was like, wow. I knew her. And so I think I emailed her and I was like, hey, I remember you from this. This is super random, but like, thanks for coming on the podcast again.
Nice. Did she remember this?
Um, I don't remember actually. I have like I don't have a very good memory of it, but I don't think that she remembered because I think she would have. Yeah, there was like a bunch of kids there, so she might have not remembered. But I did have like a couple good conversations with her there, which was cool.
Yeah, I would guess that the counselors I remember from my robotics camp when I was 12 years old probably do not remember the one particular child like me, but I do remember the counselor Haji, who was my favorite, you know. So maybe there's an asymmetry there.
Yeah.
That's interesting. What about, like, I guess, you know, we all consume a lot of media, or maybe I shouldn't speak for everybody, but lots of us consume lots of media and don't necessarily make it ourselves, right? We watch more TV shows than we produce. I think I can say that confidently. So I'm curious if the process of like putting this whole thing together and making it work was like eye-opening or surprising to you in any way about, you know, either about the world of media production and podcasting, or like, you know, more broadly.
I guess yeah, I'm one of those people that consume a lot of media, unfortunately. I should like reduce it, but it's okay. But I think just from yeah, just from experience, I had like a general idea of like how it was produced. And just like when I transitioned into like actually like, you know, producing the podcast, I think those, just by consuming media, just like gave me that good idea of how it's produced, and it translated over. It was what I expected. Maybe a little bit more on like the post production, because one of the things we do is we make clips for our podcast and we post it on YouTube, just so it's more digestible. Because I know a huge podcast can be like an hour, and that might not be suitable for a lot of people. So we condense it into clips sometimes, and I thought that was gonna be really quick in post production, but that takes like 2 hours, and yeah, it just adds to it. So I guess one thing that like we're working towards is just to like just create a schedule, or just like try to like not make it all over the place, but just try to keep it as structured as possible.
Mm-hmm. And I guess in the process, you brought up the difficulty and the time consuming nature of post production. Do you have any podcast production productivity tips? I've got a few that I've, you know, carefully crafted over the last year. But any thoughts about that? Have you tried using your computer science skills to make this better and faster?
I think Matt, didn't you like make an algorithm to like email out to a bunch of different like teachers across America, like a bunch of high school teachers to email out like our clips?
That's true. It wasn't an algorithm exactly, but it was kind of like a custom email list thing. Because yeah, one of the things that we do is like we email to teachers all around the US, and sometimes like they have email forms on their website, and that's hard to automate. And so like I haven't finished it completely. I've almost there, but yeah, just trying to automate like those forms that we have to complete.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm doing our best, but yeah, just like the fact that we're doing it, it makes like reaching out to like hundreds of teachers like a lot easier, rather than just like individually like emailing all of them. Because like one thing that we like to do is we like to personalize the emails as much as possible, so that they just seem more like receptive to us. So but yeah, that's honestly made like emailing a lot faster. So
nice. Yeah. The I think the one thing that's maybe underappreciated, I think, like by people who are sort of outside the world of programming, is like how useful, like even being able to like automate a simple form like that is. There's a pretty well-known intro to Python book called Automate the Boring Stuff with Python, that's like intended for people who have don't have a computer science education, don't have like strong programming fundamentals, to be able to automate away certain parts of their jobs. And I've found like that has been the times that I've been, you know, most grateful for having developed these skills. When I see something like I have to email 100 people, and instead of thinking, oh boy, let me like put on the headphones and type this all out, like I think, well, maybe I can automate this.
yeah, and that's kind of like why I love programming. it helps when you least expect it. So yeah.
So one thing actually that I liked about the way you structured your podcast was you included this nice little segment to break it up called 10 Epochs, which is a segment in which the interviewees are asked 10 quick questions and give their quick responses. So I've stolen this idea from you. At least for now, if I use it on future episodes, I'll make sure to credit you for this idea. But I've also stolen some of the questions, so I'm excited to hear your answers to some of the questions that you asked some of your guests. So 10 epochs, here we go, and we'll do Ava and then Matt in for each of these questions. All right. So favorite programming language?
Not Python.
Ooh, Ava, I didn't hear you there. I think you might have been on mute.
Oh, okay. I said not Python, but I'm kidding. I don't like Python. Personally, I'm just gonna say C++ because that's what I've been doing for a long time, with Visual Studios and stuff. And yeah, I mean, I think that it's just like it's pretty cool, and I like learning it because I know a lot of people use it. So I'm just gonna say C++.
Nice, Matt.
Yeah, I guess for me, it has to be Python. I know it's kind of like popular choice, but it's what I've used the most and most comfortable with.
For sure. The combination of Python and C++ together, that duo, it's the peanut butter and jelly of machine learning right there. And I personally thank God every day for the people who like C++ and enjoy learning and writing C++. So thanks for that. All right. TensorFlow or PyTorch?
I'm just gonna say PyTorch just because that's the only really thing that I've worked with.
Yeah, as for me, I would say PyTorch too. TensorFlow can get too confusing at times. So yeah, PyTorch.
Quick interlude. What do you do when you ask this question and then the interviewee just gives an answer that you completely disagree with? I'm not asking because of what's currently happening in this interview. I'm just thinking because I think in Chinasa's example, or in Chinasa's episode, I think she said MATLAB and TensorFlow. When you had Dr. Leshell Hatley on, she said she's definitely said TensorFlow. So what's going through your head? What are you thinking?
I mean, yeah, because I know those are coming. It's bound to happen that someone disagrees with me. So I prepare mentally for it just in case that happens, just so I don't garner a wild reaction. But yeah, I just prepare for it mentally. Then I actually enjoy when we get different opinions, just so it's not the same answers every time.
Yeah, I guess it would be interesting. I don't know how much of you sort of dug in with people. I don't know, how much of the conversation that you actually have ends up in the podcast. So I'm just curious, have you gotten the hotter takes from any of your guests on these questions of programming language or framework?
Most of what we say in the podcast is kind of in there. So I don't know, for the 10 epochs, we usually don't question anything just because we want it to keep it rolling, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. We just kind of we accept their answer and just move on.
Yeah. Also, I guess like you said, for me, the one that caught me off guard the most was probably the MATLAB one. I'm not a fan of MATLAB too much, but I thought it was really interesting.
Yeah, definitely. My eyebrows raised for sure because I had some traumatic it was also my first language, it was what I first started writing in, and I look back on it and I'm like, man, that was a traumatic experience. I sure wish I hadn't written all that MATLAB. But different. Yeah. All right, moving on. In 10 epochs, pre-pandemic hobby. If you can even remember that far back.
Oh my God, so long ago. Okay, pre-pandemic hobby. Oh God. I don't know. My pre-pandemic hobby and something that, lately with the vaccines coming out and everything like that, I've been getting into more lately, but hanging out with friends. I loved having parties at my house. almost every weekend, just inviting a group over and like family friends too. Just being around a lot of people. That was my hobby. I loved it so much.
Hmm.
Yeah, not to copy Ava, but yeah, I think my first year at college, just being in the dorms and just like having like all your friends like 5 feet away from you, like I don't know, that's an experience that like I'll never forget. And unfortunately, we haven't been able to do that this year, but yeah, just hanging out with friends, definitely.
Hmm. I think, yeah. Yeah, Dr. Hatley said pretty much the same thing, which I think, maybe is not an answer that people would have given for their favorite hobby before the pandemic, but we've maybe learned that
Yeah,
you don't know what you got till it's gone.
For
that's true.
sure.
All right. What is your favorite computer science class that you have taken?
I have not taken too many computer science classes at UCLA,
Ooh,
but
you're double E, so I'll accept a double E answer here if you have an electrical engineering class you like.
okay, cool. I'm actually gonna say the one that I'm taking right now. Um, ECE 3. It's like the intro to electrical engineering course. The professor is just like kind of a meme. He's a cool guy. He's a pretty fun guy. And I also really have a lot of respect for him now because we usually have weekly homeworks that take like a good hour to do every week. And we also have weekly quizzes at 8 a.m. on Mondays, and he just canceled them for the rest of the quarter. So I gotta say, I love him right now. I'm really into him right now.
That's
Love that
huge.
class.
Yeah, then as for me, also I'm taking it right now. I'm taking this class, Artificial Life and Computer Graphics, which I love. There's what I love about it is that there's like only 20 people in the class and the professor speaks his mind. There's not too many people. He feels really comfortable about it. And that's what I love. And like he specializes in that research field, which is like really cool. Like he's done a lot of cool papers in the past and he explains everything really well and just like it's really fun. So yeah, I'd have to say that class.
Mhm. What is the coolest research or engineering project that you've seen in the past year? Either like something you've done yourself, some friends have done, or like something we'd all know about, like GPT-3 or something.
Okay, so I was in a hackathon earlier this year. So I'm gonna shout out Courtney Gibbons and Brady, cannot pronounce his last name. But so the project that I made for that hackathon was actually pretty cool. My friend Raj and I, we made like a phone box. So that, in the pandemic, I feel like we use our phones a lot. So you put your phone into this box and it only like lets you take it out after a certain amount of time. And it only lets you, or sorry, it only like lets you take it out if like a certain amount of time hasn't elapsed yet, and you're only allowed to take it out a couple of times a day, pretty much. So it's supposed to limit, like
Mm.
it's like, your phone is like kind of out of sight, out of mind. Um, and then, so then, but like my friend Courtney and Brady, they made a really cool contraption. It was called the Zoomsday clock. And so it was pretty much like a clock that you can put outside your door that links to your computer. So it knows when like your Zoom meetings are for class, and it has like a timer that says like how much time left you have in your class so that your parents don't like walk in while you're in Zoom and like barge in and interrupt the class and everything like that. It'll tell them right there, like, okay, I got Zoom for like 35 more minutes. So yeah, those are the two pretty cool things. I mean, I made one and then, theirs was awesome as well. So yeah.
I could for sure use a Zoomsday clock. Sometimes when I'm running the show, I put a little on-air sign on my door, but I'd love to automate that. That'd be huge.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Yeah, they did a really good job with it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Matt.
yeah, for myself, I saw this really cool paper. I think it was maybe like 5 months ago, where these researchers at CMU, they were able to, given any picture, like a picture of like a courtyard or like in front of a building, they're able to transform a picture into like a 3D environment, which I thought was really cool. And I'm interested in graphics, so like just being able to like take a picture and just like being able to transform it into like any 3D environment I thought that was really awesome. So I'd have to say that one's.
Nice. I see. Yeah. So is this the neural radiance fields paper, or is this a different? The neural radiance fields was one where you could like take like, a couple of images kind of sparsely around an object and then turn it into a 3D model. Is this like in that line of work, or is this something different?
I think it's similar. I don't think it was that exact paper, but I forgot what the paper was called, but it's pretty similar though.
Got it. Yeah, I can't remember whether the NERF paper was from CMU or not. I feel like it was from one of the big, like, famous CS departments. But anyway, cool paper. A lot of exciting stuff in the neural graphics world for sure. Hard pivot. Startup idea. What is your $1 billion startup idea that you're sitting on for when you finally decide to pursue your founder dreams? I'll give you a second to dredge this up. Also, there's concerns about copyright, so you might need to insert a small bad idea into your good idea so that no one can steal it. But yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. Let me think about it. I've definitely thought about this before. This isn't a startup idea. I don't know if we could make this into like a corporation, but this is something that I thought about with my boyfriend over the summer that we never actually ended up doing. But I thought it would have been pretty cool at the time, but I don't know. We got busy and stuff, and it just didn't work with like school starting and everything. But what we wanted to do is we wanted to make this app. I'm not going to go into too many specifics because I kind of have some intention of making it. We wanted to make this app that pretty much it's like a one-stop shop to be able to support any like political issue that you want. So it's an app and it has like a bunch of like different links to different types of issues and like ways that you can get involved. So it can provide you with anything from like upcoming rallies in your area to petitions that you can sign to books that you can read to corporations that you can support. That was pretty much our idea. And like especially like in May when like the Black Lives Matter movement kind of got a little bit more intense from everything that was happening at the time. That was definitely something that was on my mind, and so I think that's kind of where the idea came from.
Those are definitely some choppy waters to wade into as your first startup idea, but I think people could definitely benefit from better organization tools. Actually, I did read some interesting stuff. There's some like a lot of the like labor unions that are moving to organize groups that haven't been organized in the past, like service workers, food service workers, things like that, have been embracing more digital technology. And so organizing, the Fight for 15 movement, for example, used a lot of digital organizing. So I think there's it's maybe not $1 billion startup because maybe you can't make $1 billion helping people. But it's a good startup idea, maybe.
Then okay, yeah. For me, I'll be straightforward with mine. I've had this on my mind for a while. For me, I see machine learning engineering. I feel like a lot of companies employ machine learning engineers like to help build their product, but I feel like there's less so companies that are just purely based on like machine learning, like consulting, specifically for like automation tasks. I feel like there aren't that too many companies that do like, automation for like, various industries or various like subtasks. And so I think my idea is kind of like building the Oracle, but instead of like for software for like machine learning and automation. So that's kind of like my idea. I know there's like still time until like machine learning can like reach that point where it could like automate a lot of different tasks, but that's my idea that I'm aiming for.
Nice. Ambitious for sure.
Yeah.
So with the last of I don't think I made it to 10 epochs, but this is going to be the last of our popcorn epoch questions. Who's somebody in the field of AI who you admire the most? Maybe not the most, maybe there's a bunch of people who are all at roughly the same level. You don't have to worry about offending anybody.
I'm going to say Dr. Leshell Hatley. She was honestly amazing. And her story if you haven't like listened to the if you haven't listened to the podcast yet, I recommend giving it a listen. But if you're looking for a more digestible clip on the ACM UCLA YouTube, there is a clip where she talks about pretty much what she did at Google, and how like right after she talked at Google, and some of her like experience, like she just pretty much talks about how when she was at Google campus, like working as like a resident for them, she did experience a lot of discrimination, and she did feel a little bit left out, but she really toughed it out because she knew that what she was doing was important. And so she was very inspiring, and yeah, I have to say, probably her.
We'll definitely come back to that after we get Matt's answer.
So actually, Ava stole my answer, unfortunately, but yeah, honestly, for some of the reasons Ava said, of course, but also what like she really inspired me in terms of like teaching. She's a really like personal, or like she's really relatable with everything she says, and I really love teaching AI, and just hearing some of her responses about like how she teaches or how she approaches it just really inspires me. So yeah, I would have to say Leshell Hatley as well.
Yeah. So that was a really incredible episode of the podcast, really great interview. And one of the pieces of it, like I'd heard a little bit about that story. So just for folks who haven't heard heard this episode or weren't there when it was recorded, she was part of like Google did a program where they wanted to like increase their surface area with historically Black colleges and universities in the United States. They invited people over. I think at one point it was called Howard West, was like one version of the name of the program. And they ran into serious issues with like discrimination and like casual racism on Google's campus. Dr. Hatley, of course, gives a much better version of this story than I can give in the podcast. You should definitely check it out. But one aspect of the story I didn't know was that the author of the Google Manifesto, James Damore, was actually like published it immediately after they left the campus, and like attended some of their events, which is just like a wild twist to this story, which I'd never heard anywhere else.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it, honestly, as well.
Yeah, our old outreach director Arjun told us you have to get Dr. Leshell Hatley on your podcast. She's amazing, and she has such a cool story. And so I just asked her about it in the interview, and she said it, and like it's like one of those problems that kind of makes you like kind of shaking with anger, I guess. Like, I don't know, I take that stuff super personally. I know like some people like feel it for it, but like they don't take it like very, very personally. But I remember I was like super shocked, super mad, almost cried. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, yeah, it's really, deeply upsetting, especially the I don't know, the sort of like disconnect of like thinking about these problems and working on these problems with people who really get it and know like, how serious the problems are. And then sort of, I guess, I don't know, coming across people who are so just like, ignorant of the issues, so off base. Yeah. I guess like on that front, I really appreciate the like work that you're doing to expose the stories of these people that you're interviewing to a broader audience, to create a more inclusive AI community. I'm wondering what you think are some of the like most critically important issues that more inclusive community might resolve, right? Like what are the problems in AI right now and in the future that creating an inclusive community would help solve?
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I really think that it become like the main issue is that a lot of models nowadays, they're really biased, especially with like NLP models. And I think just like our community is inclusive, but I don't think it's to the extent that it needs to be. Because right now we have people of all backgrounds in AI that are speaking up, but I think we need more people. We need more people from these backgrounds to speak up, so that becomes more like prevalent that we need to address these issues. So I think just like biases in models and even biases in like data, um, I think that's probably like the biggest issue. And just like making sure that we're collecting like the right kind of data and like we're collecting like a diverse set of data and like we have people like people from like all different types of backgrounds, like reviewing the data, reviewing the models, biases, just making sure that everything's in check. I think that's the most important part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does seem like, the participation, right? Getting more and more people to be like participants and to have like say and stake in these systems is like, seems like the only way, like rather than waiting for people, the users of Twitter to discover that the cropping function seems to be racially biased. That's something that should be picked up in pre-production and could be picked up in pre-production if we had a more like a community that was more inclusive and more diverse.
Yeah, I would say, sorry, I honestly, Matt kind of said it, but I think that just really quickly, like the biggest thing is like bringing people to the table. I think that it's like quite unfair. Like, I don't know. I've heard like a lot of adults, when I was in high school, like I met a lot of adults that were from like lower income communities that said like, oh, if I was a kid and I knew that engineering was a thing or I knew that computer science was a thing, I would have totally gone involved with it. And I feel like, it's that problem that leads us to have these like ignorant models put out and things that are just completely tone deaf.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, bringing people to the table is really important, and raising that awareness can solve a lot of issues for us.
Yeah, I talked with somebody who was building a model that was like a camera to detect distracted driving. So it could tell whether somebody was like paying attention or not, whether they were looking at their phone, zoning out. And like they really sold it as a safety thing, and I could definitely see the potential safety benefits of something. But like, the like final use case was a company was going to pay to install it in the cars of the drivers in their fleet. And I feel like if you had like had enough experience working this sort of job where you have a manager who's like breathing down your neck at all times, or if you'd worked in, sort of like out there in the trenches more, you would be able to more clearly see the potential, like the like power conflict there, the like ethical issues and the concerns with, enforcing this AI surveillance on truck drivers.
Yeah.
Sure. That's interesting. I haven't heard about that. It's an interesting example.
I think Amazon ended up rolling it out to like some of their fleets, but and got like a ton of pushback, like pretty much immediately from the drivers and from people who heard about it.
Yeah, to me, just like things like that, it takes me back to my English class in high school when we read, 1984. I'm not sure if y'all are familiar with that book, but Big Brother is always watching over you, and yeah, that's the kind of vibes that it gives me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I would definitely say, yeah, it's a little. I found it interesting actually that one of your guests, Paco Guzman, we mentioned him earlier from Facebook, talked about being like very optimistic about the future of AI and machine learning, and I found that kind of surprising because nowadays I kind of associate optimism about machine learning with people who don't care about inclusion and don't care so much about biases, about how machine learning interacts with existing systems of power. So I'm curious, I mean, where are you on the optimism pessimism scale, between Paco and me, in what the future of AI holds for, for not just inclusion within our community, but for like designing technologies that are beneficial and not harmful?
I think that I don't know, when I think of optimism, yeah, like there is that undertone of it. I'd like to be optimistic. I'd like to say that things are going to get better, but super sad, like coming to realize like when you're little, you think that everything is going to be fixed when you're older. And now that I'm becoming an adult, I'm like 19 years old, I'm entering the adult realm. I'm starting to see just like no, like this is never gonna, it's not never gonna, it's gonna definitely decrease, but it's never gonna end. There are always gonna be people who just are, racist or prejudiced or biased and don't care. So I'm optimistic in the sense that, it's going to decrease, but I'm pessimistic in the fact that, life is always suffering. um, yeah, so that's something that I've definitely begun to realize, but I will always work. My career goal is to always work to make it inclusive. That's something that like I can like grow up and like work at like a chip company and just be an electrical engineer, but I do want to have a social impact. I don't want to just be sitting behind a computer designing stuff, even though there's nothing wrong with that. I personally, in terms of my life goals, I want to be involved in a company or in a certain way in my life to be able to like increase the like this applicability of technology and increase the representation.
Mm.
Yeah, I guess for myself, I don't have a definitive answer to that. I kind of lie in between. I think for me, how I approach like everything I do, is I approach everything that like I really want to leave everything like better than it already is, and kind of like what Ava said, I really want to like uplift people, especially like people like from diverse backgrounds, including myself. I really want to uplift these people so that like these problems become like less prevalent, and just seeing like impacts that I made. I haven't made too many, but like small impacts I made to like uplift people and just like bring people like into like tech or whatever it may be. For me, that's like really satisfying, and just like knowing that I'm uplifting people. And at the end of the day, like I can't control the entire world, but what I can control is like the impact I have on other people. And for me, that's like my main goal, just like having a positive impact on other people. And I understand that I can't change the world, but I'm doing the best I can.
Mm-hmm. As I think, keeping on a slightly maybe tenser or darker note here, a question I wanted to ask you about, since this is something that I think about a lot as somebody who wants to make things better without making them worse, so to speak. Like, how do you balance the need for like representation and exposure, like exposure of like people who are out there who don't know about engineering as a potential career path, don't know about AI. They like, we got to get out there and contact them. We want to provide role models, right? Get a hold of the people like Dr. Hatley, who are these like incredible role models. How do you balance that need with the dangers of like demanding that people provide basically this sort of like unpaid labor to resolve the resolve the like crises of racism and like cis hetero patriarchy, and sort of demanding these things out of other people when they've been often burdened in so many other ways?
I'm gonna quote Dr. Hatley here. So she did run into that issue when she went to Google, and she wanted to leave because she's like, it's not my job to make these people not racist. She stuck it out because her friend told her, or like one of her colleagues told her, like, this is what we've been like working for. And props to her for sticking it out, but obviously I would have understood if she wanted to just go home and not deal with that. And I think that's something that it's definitely a hard question. And I am a female, so I do run into some issues, but I also understand that like I've had a privileged life, have had a pretty privileged life. I haven't had to run into many issues, thankfully, but I know that's not the same for everyone else. So I definitely just don't like to talk about it. Like talk about it like I do know that or anything like that. But I don't know. I would just say, props to the people who tough it out, like Dr. Hadley, and like go through very uncomfortable situations just so that she can like validate someone or fix a company's issue. But also, props to the people that don't stand for it too. It's personal preference. It depends on the person. And I think that the whole point of this thing is like we need to stop telling them we need to just stop telling people who are. My belief is that I think we shouldn't have expectations about like model minorities, for example. I think that they have the right to make the decision based on what they would like to do and how they would like to be represented, and never expect them to fix everything for us because it's not their job. It's the oppressor's job, if anything. But yeah.
Yeah, that was another really great moment, I thought, of the interview with Dr. Hadley, where she talked. I think her friend called it the civil rights struggle of our time, which I thought was very apt. It does seem like there's a lot of like focus and attention converging on the ways like machine learned algorithms are, rolling back the successes of labor rights and civil rights movements of the last century. Matt, any thoughts? Any thoughts about the unpaid labor of diversity and equity and inclusion, or like tips for how to go about minimizing that impact and maximizing the benefit?
Yeah, it's definitely a really tough like question to answer, but um, I think about it a lot, like for myself, and like always said, like I understand people that like do something about it and don't do something about it. Like for myself, like how I view it is like, if someone like a minority like is able to like push through all the struggles and get like to a good position in life, that's what they've been working for their entire life, and they've been going through all their struggles. And um, quite frankly, it might be hard for them to work more than they need to help uplift others. But from what I've seen, from my experience, those type of people, they really love like who they grew up with or like where they grew up with, and I always see them going back to the community that like helped uplift them, and that's always really inspiring. And that inspires me to do the same thing. And I'm not saying it's like necessarily like bad culture or culture that like I'm not saying it's like something that everyone needs to follow, but that's what I see most people do, and that's what's inspired me.
Got it. Yeah. I think maybe I've been told that, well, one, we should probably end on a happier note if possible, and then also you're supposed to end videos with a call to action. I don't know if you've come across this, when learning how to do your media production. So I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about key steps that you think folks can take to make like our community more representative and more inclusive. So maybe steps for students and professors, things for engineers, managers, and founders, maybe for broader sort of stakeholders in AI, what they can do, people who are going to be impacted by these systems, which is pretty much everybody, and or other non-technical professionals, lawyers, doctors, who like are maybe can be like allies in this. For any of those groups, what are your thoughts about like key steps that you think they could take?
Yeah, I think just in terms of like being like up to date on what AI is, if you're like part of a different industry, I don't really think that there's a need to like learn all the technical stuff about it. But just understand there's like a lot of issues right now, especially with like biases and like machine learning models. And I think the biggest thing to take away is that, AI isn't perfect. There's a lot of things we need to work towards. And the next step towards that is making sure that the people that make these models come from a diverse set of backgrounds. And I know we repeated that so many times, but I can't emphasize that enough. And I just think that the best way to do it is for the people that have made it to the stage where they are working behind the scenes with AI, just sharing their story, how they got there. I think just sharing stories, humans connect by sharing stories, and if we can inspire others by sharing their story and uplifting other people to make our community more diverse, then I think that's the best foot forward.
Mm-hmm. Before we get Ava's answer, I would say I was recently reading Yeshi Milner, who is the head of Data for Black Lives, released a really, really great sort of like paper, almost a short book at this point, about data capitalism that I was reading. and she talks about data washing in it, which is this sort of way that people take what should be decisions that are made by people about who's paid, how much, when, and then automate them and use the like automation process to hide their bias. So I think what you said about one of the most important things that people outside of our community, what they can do is sort of like learn not to trust AI models a little bit. Don't give them that like sort of objectivity that they automatically, statistics can't be racist or whatever attitude. Like cutting that out seems to be a really important step people can take to make their to maybe mitigate some of the negative impacts that automation and machine learning can have.
So I think that my call to action or the advice that I can give is if you're in a position where you're teaching someone something or you're giving advice to everyone, don't underlook new inclusive teaching techniques. It can definitely be hard for individuals from an older generation or anyone who's just stubborn, frankly, to like learn a new way to explain things, but don't like be able to change that. I think the way that people learn things have such a profound impact on like whether or not they're going to get into it or something like that. Like if you're a teacher, you already know this, but you literally have the ability to change lives, and you probably have one of the most important jobs in society. And unfortunately, I feel like a lot of people don't recognize that. But yeah, be open to like looking up and researching about new inclusive teaching techniques. And also just for anyone in general, reading is super helpful. I think that reading from the perspective of, again, individuals who have taken on the responsibility, who are minorities who have taken that responsibility to try and fix things and stuff like that. Reading everything, not reading everything, but like reading things that they write and reading their experiences and listening to the stories that Matt talked about are super important. And it makes us empathize with each other a little bit more. I think that in general, all these issues come from a lack of empathy and, ignorance as well. But I think that if we would just empathize with each other a little bit more, a lot of things would be nicer and easier. And I think the way that you empathize is you learn about people's struggles and you listen to them. And, reading is the best way to listen to people's stories.
Yeah, I guess to close us out here, do you have any quick book recommendations or any other media recommendations for these kinds of stories? I know like it's growing. There's a lot more stuff than there was 5 years ago about this. But it'd be great to know what the good ones are.
I would say the only ones that I can like really think of right now are our old outreach director, Arjun. They write some pretty great articles. Arjun Subramonian, I believe is their last name. I met them online, so I never like had to say their last name, but they write some pretty awesome articles about bias and stuff like that. And then also another one of our directors at UCLA, her name is Maya Rahman. She writes some pretty cool articles about bias in Google, especially on Medium, which is like a blog website. So she has a pretty cool blog as well. And then one book that I read that probably changed the way I think about oppression, like in general. This book, it's very general, has nothing to do with AI, but it's called Pedagogy of the Oppressed, and it's an interesting read. It's definitely a cool read. Unfortunately I was only able to get through like the first section of it because it has a couple of sections, but that was super interesting for sure.
Mm-hmm. That is one of my siblings' favorite books also. They just like absolutely love Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And also, by the way, I put the names for Arjun and for Maya in the YouTube chat for people who are listening. So if you check that out, you can get their names. Matt?
Yeah, I don't have anything like specific, but just for me, I already said that I'm a big junkie for content, media content earlier. Sometimes on YouTube, I just end up like into the YouTube spiral where I keep going through a lot of stuff. But a lot of things I watch are about just stories about random people around the world, and like from Europe, third world countries, whatever it may be, in different situations. I love learning about people. and their struggles. And like it's easy to like watch people in their prime and their highlights, like most social media is now. But for me, I enjoy, learning out about how people live day to day and just the struggles that they face. And ever since I started doing that, maybe 6 months ago, I just become like more empathetic, more understanding of people. And I just think that's the best way to do it, is just learning other people's stories, where they come from. Everyone's different. And just being able to empathize with someone that a complete stranger, because you never know where they came from. I just think that's the best way to approach just everyone or just life in general.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'd like to close us out here, thank both of you for coming on and telling a little bit of your stories in the course of this hour and sharing that with our viewers. Hopefully they find them additionally, inspiring, or they learn a little bit more about how to empathize from your stories. So thank you so much for coming. I'm going to close out the live stream. Thanks to everybody in the audience and to all the folks watching this later. Check the description of the video for links to some of the things that we